Hello, everybody. We just had a bet how many people would be here for this talk. We had somebody in our panel saying 10, and the highest was 70, so I think Simon from Tesco's won. So, well done, Simon. Maybe we change the bet to how many are left at the end, so I might get a little bit closer. While everybody's being mic'd up, let me give you a bit of an idea about what we're going to say today. If you think about the UK, obviously we've all heard that we're a nation of shopkeepers. I think that, I was just walking around between here and the and Borough Market and thinking, you know what, we're not just a nation of shopkeepers, we're some of the best shopkeepers in the world. And, whether that's digital shopkeepers or physical shopkeepers, I think we're doing a pretty good job. And what we've got here is a panel who I think will give us a range of different views, some from the startup perspective and some from the big brand perspective. So it's really about sharing exciting things that are happening for customers, for startups and big brands, and really thinking about the digital, the physical, and also using data. It's just me here still. Any questions before we start? Any questions I should ask them? Anyone? Come on, somebody's got something they want to hear. No? Okay. Songs? No? Yes? Where do I find inspiration about retail? I mean, that's a good question. I think some of it's literally about walking around. I think some of the challenge that we have in London is because we've got so much, we don't necessarily walk around enough in other countries, in Asia and in the rest of Europe. And I think that's an interesting challenge for us as things go on. I think that another challenge is understanding what's going on in startups and in the digital world, because there's so much happening so often that it's a real challenge. So, I mean, it's a good question. It's an ongoing challenge for us all. And on that point, let me thank you for that. Thank you. I didn't want to sing.
Very good filling. Very good filling, Grant.
Thank you. So we've got a very impressive panel here. I'm going to do a little introduction and then we're going to kick off into some questions. And again, as we go, literally, if you've got a question, just chuck your hand up and we'll ask it, because, I'm sure we'll have time for a bunch of different questions. So first of all, we'll start with Jo. Jo's the MD of Ogilvy One. They're customer engagement gurus. She's also a mum of 2 toddlers, a yoga instructor, and very highly experienced and trained shopper. So she's bringing a lot of expertise to this panel. On my left, Simon Rogers, head of performance marketing at Tesco. Now, he's an accountant originally, who's turned digital marketer. So that's kind of weird. He's having a lot of trouble at the moment adjusting to spending money rather than telling people not to spend money. So it's quite hard for him. It's early days. We need to help him along. Jo, luckily, will very easily help him spend as much money as he wants. Mm-hmm. To Jo's left, we have Doug Gardner. He's the CIO of River Island. He's really a digital and e-commerce guru. We've had a few chats before this panel, and he's a CIO with a real marketing focus, and I think that brings a really interesting bend. He's not the sort of CIO, the one that says, give me the spec in detail before I do anything. He's pushing the boundaries. So I think he's going to bring a really interesting point of view. And then Ross, I heard just now that he's Entrepreneur of the Year or something in London, so very, very successful. Bit more effort on the clapping, thank you at the back. I can see you. But anyway, so he's founder and CEO of Appear Here, and having read a little bit about him, he's also a rebellious monarchist. Maybe he can talk about that a little bit later. But his business is making it easy to rent shop space making it as easy as renting a hotel room. And I think it's a very exciting thing. If you haven't seen what's going on, I think you're going to hear some interesting stuff from him now. So that's the panel. Without further ado, let's kick off. First question to Ross. Do you think great retail innovation is coming from startups now or from established brands?
I think it's coming from both big and small brands, but I think most innovation is definitely coming from startups. When you look at what big established brands are doing and the exciting innovations they're making, a lot of the time it is things that we're seeing paved first by sort of a couple of young guys or in a back office or in a garage going out and getting started with that naivety. And then the big brand is taking their experience and sort of their knowledge and applying it to that naivety and maybe getting sometimes more traction if they can move fast internally. But I think startups are providing most of the innovation and are also having the ability more than ever to work in partnership with those big brands that I don't think they were able to do 5-10 years ago.
Have you got some good examples for us, Ross, of things that you've seen, over the last month or so?
From our side, I mean, we're a small technology company. We're now about 35 people. We're 2 years old. Last year, we were 5-6 people, and we worked and we did a big partnership with Transport for London. Now, Transport for London gave us what was the shittiest tube station in East London and allowed us to recreate it. Now, I cannot imagine Transport for London doing that probably on their own, because it was quite good. They could work with this startup. If it all went wrong, they could sort of be like, oh, well, we trust this startup, and damn, it didn't work out. But on the flip side, I can't imagine a startup being able to do that 10 years ago. I think Transport for London really had this trust in us and had the foresight and the innovation internally to take that risk. And recently we did a similar collaboration with Topshop. And again, you've got to have great entrepreneurial people within those organizations to take those bets. But I think that we, with naivety and without rules, could probably work with those big companies to inject the ideas that we had.
Interesting. So, Joe, what do you think about what's happening with startups and big brands? And is there anything that you think is quite exciting?
I agree with Ross. I think that broadly, innovation can come from anywhere. I think it's a cultural thing more than to do with size or age. I mean, I think Burberry's is a great example of a retailer that innovates. Yes, they do take advantage of things that startup companies may have invented, and they tend to make them mainstream. But I think more than anything, they have a culture of innovation that allows that. And it comes from the top, and it's not just about having innovation in a unit within an organization or as a pet project. I think it needs to be at all levels. We do a lot of work with universities. Part of our program of training and learning, and I think that's a good way to tap in and work with entrepreneurial people like Ross at early ages and early stages. But I mean, I think it is interesting. You do see lots of big brands, big organizations picking up work that startups have created and taking them mainstream. And I do think there's an important role they play in that, which is perhaps not necessarily about coming up with the ideas in the first place, but about enabling most of us to access those ideas.
I was just talking to some of the startups outside, and some of them were saying there's a challenge. They've got great ideas. They go to big brands, and the big brands' procurement departments say, "You're not big enough to work with us until you're big enough. Go away." Do you think that can be a challenge, Simon?
It can certainly be a challenge. The problem. Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Do you think procurement are evil?
Do I think procurement are evil? I think procurement for very big established companies become very set in their ways, and this is sort of to our conversation maybe slightly earlier. For Tesco, procurement means buying apples. It means buying things from farmers, and that means that we establish a set of rules to support the farmers' more perhaps than you would necessarily need to support a more innovative technology company. Specifically, you don't want ever to have a farmer or a small producer who's so reliant on you that you can seriously damage their business if things change suddenly. But maybe the sort of technology and innovative companies out there need that one area of focus to work on rather than trying to spread their capacity across many clients, so they can get that sort of big, that big success case working with.
Oh, interesting. Do we have any procurement people here?
I don't think procurement are evil.
Okay, just checking. It's quite interesting. So there's nobody from procurement here at this innovation conference. That is a surprise. Doug, a different question. How are customers changing, and what are the implications for you, for River Island and maybe for other big brands?
Well, it's really interesting because a few years ago we were all faced with the death of the high street. Everybody thought that bricks and mortar were going to go away, everybody'd stay in their home and order online, and we've seen a massive shift in that, and there's a big resurgence back into the stores. So the engagement with the customer now is dramatically changing. With the advent of digital, customers are deeply engaging in all of the experiences on the desktop, on the mobile, on apps, and they're now really starting to take that engagement back into our stores. So we're seeing with things like click and collect and in-store order, the way that customers are actually physically engaging with the store now is a new dynamic. We're pushing lots more customers back into the store, and customers now are very used to using their mobile device in a store, sometimes to check prices against competitors, but more and more customers want to engage with our staff again, and also within our own physical environment. They want to engage with the store. So for a lot of times we spent forever, the staff were there to help a customer if they did a lot of background work of restocking the shelves and replenishment. Now we're seeing an increased demand where customers want to re-engage with our staff, and we're seeing our staff need to be tooled up to be able to engage with the customer in a very different way than they have. So in a very short space of time, we're seeing a complete change in the way that the customers are now engaging with the brand.
When we talked earlier, you were talking about the fact that your staff as well, using mobile devices, were starting, because you were effectively giving them almost business apps for engaging with customers, they were starting to build on the apps themselves. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, we're seeing a massive shift in the way you design systems for people that use them within your store. We're applying the same logic that we do to our app, to our end customer. We're designing systems that anybody can pick up and buy from us without any kind of user manual. So we're putting the same approach into the store. We've deployed Android devices to all of our stores now for the staff to use. And one of the great stories I have is we deployed it into our Liverpool Superflag store. And when we went in with the pilot, with all these devices brand new, ready to go, with all of our apps on it, ready to go, handed them out to the staff, and then huddled around with the area manager and regional controller, and they were discussing with me, how are we going to train everybody? How are we going to get this out to them? And within the 15 minutes we're standing there, the staff had unlocked the devices, started using them, started using the cameras for different things, and engaged with the devices in a very, very natural way. So we're seeing the fact that we design things like we design for an end customer, for a very young audience that we've got, that they're really picking these things up and engaging with them, and they're using them way beyond what we've designed them for. So we put all of our apps on it, all of our stuff that we use in terms of business, but they're using the cameras, the videos, they're using a lot of devices, a lot of the features of Android to do things in the store that we didn't tell them to do, but they're finding very, very useful applications. So we're seeing a dramatic shift in the engagement of the devices in the store.
That's great. Simon, what do you think about customers' changes?
So the big change of the last sort of year or two is very much driven by the mobile device. That will seem like a very obvious answer to everyone. Yes, we use mobile a lot more pervasively in our lives than we've ever done before. But it means that there are a lot more connected devices that our customers use, and the challenge that we face is how we reach them in the most appropriate way at the most appropriate time with the most appropriate messaging, no matter how they choose to engage with us or how we choose to try to engage with them. It also means there's a degree of immediacy to retail that's perhaps new and has never been there before. Again, when you're in shop, you can use your mobile device to check on price, and you can just as easily find a better price elsewhere and choose to order the product from someone else, and that can all be done in a matter of minutes. I think it was Joe mentioned to me the other day that the average consideration time is now 12 minutes.
12 minutes, yeah.
Which is kind of scary when you think about it. It means if you're not there at exactly the right time with that right message, you've potentially lost that customer who should have been a very engaged person for you to market to. Linking up all of those devices for all of our customers and choosing how we show them a joined up message, especially again a company like Tesco that's got a huge amount of communications it wants to send to every single one of its customers, and that would start to feel a bit like you were being spammed if we were to send you all of those messages. I'm sure maybe it does anyway. We try not to, but that's the sort of big challenge. That
you were saying the other day that you're doing more and more research to understand how open people are to being communicated to on all their devices in all sorts of different ways.
Yeah, so there's sort of two stages to that research. First of all, to see the basics, how customers feel about being communicated on this one device, but then sort of step beyond, and the bit that we don't know the answer to yet is how customers feel about being communicated to on a third-party website through a display advert or through a Google-sponsored, a Gmail-sponsored campaign based on data that we hold about shopping behavior. That's a sort of area that we think has got huge potential, but it can also seem very intrusive if it's done in the wrong way. So we're on a sort of exploration process at the moment to find out how people feel about that, whether it's too far for the time being.
Yeah, well, I think we might talk about relevance versus intrusion a little bit later here as well. Maybe another question here to Joe. This is a trickier one, I think. What are the challenges with using customer and product data to mimic personal experiences with favorite retailers? So, we think back to great experiences in store, particularly with great shops that you think, that was amazing, I really loved that. What are the challenges to really starting to use data about the customer and about the products themselves to almost mimic that experience in this new world?
Yeah, it is interesting, and it's a very good question, because I think if does anybody watch Mr. Selfridge? So I love Mr. Selfridge. One of the things I love about it is that whole kind of personal shopper thing, and the concept of, I guess I wasn't around for the days where you walked into a store and you were greeted by name. Hello, Joe. How are you today? Gosh, you look like you could do with a new hat or new pair of shoes. And yeah, yes, I would, absolutely. And, did you know so-and-so was in here last week, and look what she tried on. And, oh, well, I'm definitely going to have 2 pairs of those then. All those kind of, the old ways of doing business, the personal touch. And I think, as retailers grew, department stores, supermarkets, we lost some of that personal touch. Online, surprisingly, actually enabled us to get it back a bit. If you think about when Amazon came out with recommendations and what people like you were buying, or reviews, that enabled us to get a little bit of that information or the insight that we used to get from the sales assistant. And I think that's what's interesting today, actually. It's looking at how brands, as Doug was saying, are taking some of the online experience into the tangible kind of physical retail outlet to bring the two things together. And be that using mobile phone combined with beacon technology that enables us, the retailer to know where in the store you are and therefore what a relevant offer might be, or joining up a loyalty program information with your web behavior, browsing and behavior to target more relevant offers and services to you. But I definitely think that is the trend, and I think that's what consumers want as well. And it is about, at the end of the day, we talk about the consumer being more in control than they've ever been, and certainly, this one device in their pocket does seem to give them an awful lot more control. And I know myself, when I do go into a shop and I'm thinking about making a purchase, sometimes it might not even be that big. I'm certainly having a quick look. Could I find it somewhere else cheaper? Does anybody else, I know, have something similar, that kind of thing? What are they saying? And I think that's probably a trend that we're seeing. Certainly in the US, Target is exactly one of those organizations. Burberry, again, as I said, I get another example of innovation, is doing exactly that, joining up their online experience with their offline and bringing the two together from a loyalty perspective.
And do you think, Doug, in River Island, you're seeing that play out for the customers? Is it a better experience because of the connections of data and customer information?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. As this has started to unfold in our stores, and as the change has started to occur, I mentioned earlier, we've started to see this trend where the role of the staff within the store is dramatically changing. So we've had many instances where customers come in and they'll bring their mobile phone in and start asking the staff about something on our website, and they don't know. So by now putting the Android devices in their hand and putting our relevant apps so that they've got more information than our customer, it's actually all of a sudden it's given them confidence. So it's simple things like using our merchandising tools on the website to help them upsell and cross-sell. They feel so much more comfortable now talking to a customer, even pre the digital revolution with the customer. They feel really empowered to help the customer. Simple things like our mobile pause that we'll be trialing early next year. They just feel it's a great piece of customer service. Instead of having to send someone to a till, being able to complete the sale or assist them. We have in-store order. It's really good if they're talking to a customer and they want something that's not available in store and they know it's available online. Instead of sending the customer home to order it or asking them to do it on their phone, they can take them to the till and complete the sale. So all of these things, we're feeding this information to our staff, and it's not even, we haven't even got yet to the stage of real personalization about the person standing in front of you, but just good old-fashioned customer service, building that confidence and training that staff. We can feed them and train them so much quicker with a handheld device without making huge efforts. Simply giving them our app and our mobile website, they see just arrived, they see merchandising tips, and they tell me they feel so much more confident dealing with a customer. And again, you go back, if anything, we've reduced the staff hours in a store, but the staff that are there feel they're providing true customer service, and the reaction we get from customers is very positive. It's a good experience.
The River Island in Canary Wharf, actually, the staff there are using it, taking photos.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, they
brilliant.
set out, like I said, this is the example of simple things. They'll get the visual merchandise and they'll tweak it for the individual stores. They'll set it, they'll take a picture of it, and then when the customers go in and disturb it throughout the day, they have a visual reference. They come back in and they look at it and reset the thing. Again, there's simple things like our best sellers. Instead of having a report that they hand out to people, the manager now takes a picture of the top sellers and it's on the handheld device and they flick through it. So they just have this real visual, it's almost, I call it this Snapchat approach. We're pushing everything down to very short bursts of information for them. So they're really used to dealing with things in their normal day-to-day life like that. So we're designing all of the store systems now to be in the same format that they're used to receiving.
Another question, Ross. Are you seeing many digital businesses starting to set up shops?
Yeah, I mean, one of our biggest growth areas that appear here is seeing technology companies, especially e-commerce companies, that are actually coming to us and setting up physical retail stores. And I think what's most interesting for the technology companies is a lot of those guys do have a complete overview of data for their customer. They do have, a lot of the time, smaller organizations that are technology first. And what's incredible is when they're launching stores, a lot of the time, technology doesn't even play a part. Mr. Porter today, or yesterday, launched one of their stores in London for the holiday season. You can't see an iPad or a mobile or anything anywhere, but they're a technology company. And I think we have to remember why people want to visit a store. And I love Burberry. I think they're doing a great job. But I also think the Burberry store on Regent Street is a bit of an annoying experience. You can go into the changing rooms, and there's a chip that then shows you a video of how that garment was made. And I think that's sort of cool, but I can look at that on YouTube. I'm in the store because I want to talk to somebody. I want to touch the product. I want to have this amazing experience that is physical and not through a screen. And I think what's exciting from my side is seeing these technology companies launching very traditional stores. One of the best stores, and it isn't a tech company, but I love in Shoreditch, is Topman's General Store, and how they've sort of stripped everything back. You've got a tiny footprint, one guy in there selling, and everything feels very curated. And I think it's how do we take those elements of what's happening online, like curation, like knowing the bestsellers stuff that you mentioned, and bring it into a much more personal, person-to-person environment.
And what's the sort of cost per acquisition in a store versus online for some of these businesses?
So, that's one of my most things that excites me most is how physical retail is becoming this media space. So we've got online brands that when they look at the marketing dollars that they're spending or marketing pounds that they're spending on Google AdWords and then spending the same amount on a physical experience. But imagine if you've got this sort of pop-up ability like Google AdWords, you can take a great location, take a great audience, and pay by the day, week, or month. So suddenly they've got a similar flexibility to Google and AdWords. And we have got online retailers that are getting a better cost per acquisition on a physical store than they are getting on Google AdWords, especially some of the new up-and-coming brands, because if you imagine for certain industries, the price point and the CPA is so high that actually a shop for a week in a high-value location or a high-footfall location can create a better conversion, not just for the CPA, but in terms of sales and basket size and all those KPIs that our technology companies are looking at.
That's very interesting.
And I think that's pretty crazy, right? It going sort of
really
full
is.
circle.
Maybe going back to online for a second, Simon, let's talk about ad blocking. Do you think ad blocking is, do you think it's the devil? Do you think it's nirvana? What do you think? I'm a customer, I hate ads. Surely ad blocking should be stopped.
Yeah, so you probably want more than a one-word answer to this. I think ad blocker presents a serious challenge to the free internet. The sort of creation of it has been done and sort of rolled out without necessarily any effort made to explain to internet users that the reason the content they enjoy consuming is free is because advertisers are prepared to pay for it and show them a piece of advertising alongside. So in one sense, potentially it's slightly irresponsible, but at the same time, we as advertisers have to recognize that we are culpable in forcing people towards ad blocker because the quality of our ads or the relevance of our ads or the intrusiveness of our ads is unacceptable to the people who are...
I mean, how good are ads at the moment, Joe, do you think? I mean, thinking about the agency environment, do you think that the ads are so much better now than they have been in the past? Obviously, we've got we've got a lot more channels, but...
Well, it depends which agency the client's using, of course, Grant. Let's be honest. There is a lot of bad advertising out there. There's a lot of advertising that, as somebody who works in the ad industry, I don't want to see. And I think that there is actually a responsibility of the media owner in this as well, in terms of working with advertisers to improve the quality of the adverts and the content of those adverts that are appearing. I think O2 are doing some of that now. EE come at it from a slightly different angle, and they are running a series of kind of forums and discussions, I think, at the moment, which is around consumer choice. But for me, and a colleague at another agency said this, that anybody who sees ad blocking as a negative threat rather than a positive challenge is in the wrong industry. And that's certainly how we look at it in terms of if you're creating content that is either entertaining, educating, informative, or useful, then it's not junk. There's still, you walk past a number of doors and you'll see on streets lots of people have the no junk mail stickers up or whatever through their letterbox. But the takeaway menu from their local curry house, that's not junk mail because that's useful to me because that's my favorite place and I want to buy from it. So, I think those are important principles. Obviously, technology puts a different lens on this because it enables people to block before they've even had chance to see what content might come up. And I think I was reading somewhere that at the moment on the App Store, ad blockers, 2 apps are coming in at number 3 and number 9 or something in the paid for charts. So, it is a consideration, but I do think the responsibility is not just with the people who create the ads, but I do think it's with the media owners.
Yeah.
And I think Simon's point about, all the content that we get and how that is funded is an incredibly valid one.
I assume it's with the client as well. And, but I mean, what you're saying is the opportunity is that actually there's more channels than there've ever been. This should be the best time to be in advertising and direct-to-consumer communication, if you like, because you can listen to them easier and you can just do all sorts of different things. Are there any things, you know, across the panel that you think are really going well at the moment in terms of retail to consumer engagement? Any sort of favorites as we go across the panel?
I think, well, for us, it is anything that enhances the service to the customer. I used a couple of examples: in-store order and click and collect. Customers want them. A very, very high percentage of our orders are going via click and collect. So there's an opportunity to connect with that customer. So all of these things, all of these channels, all of these features within our retail experience, both digital and store, if you're providing a communication and a connection to the customer that they really want and are finding value, that is very exciting. It gives you an opportunity. So again, this resurgence of the store, taking a click and collect customer, putting them back into the store where they're engaging with a member of staff. You've got emails, you've got communication flowing back and forth to these people, talking about their order. There's great opportunity in there to really target and engage with them in that space.
Okay. Ross, what's your sort of favorite thing happening between brands and customers?
I think 3 different things. One is sort of content. So looking at going back to sort of Net-a-Porter and Mr. Porter, how Net-a-Porter's now created a monthly magazine, Mr. Porter about to do something similar, and you see this amazing content they're curating, and you suddenly realize, especially with startups as well, who are suddenly investing in publications and investing in amazing experiences, and you realize that actually today we can buy more than we've ever been able to buy, and you can go online and use Amazon Prime and have something you want, and by tomorrow it could be in your house.
Yeah.
And things are more convenient than ever before. So suddenly we go back to those original human needs, which is that we want to go and walk down beautiful streets and look at beautiful people and be told what to buy and have a lovely coffee and read a magazine and do all those types of things. And I think it's interesting how technology companies are going back to those beginnings, and how, because there's now so much choice, you know, I love going down Redchurch Street or Lamb's Conduit Street and into these little tiny stores and having somebody have one rail with 10 garments on, because I don't have to think about everything else. And they've done the editorial process for me. And I think that humans want that more than ever because there's so much choice. The second thing I think is customization, or what I think of more editorial. And you look at companies like Knitton, I don't know if anyone knows them in the room, but an amazing, amazing new fashion company. They've got a pop-up at the moment on opposite Paul Smith in Covent Garden on Floral Street. And you can go in there, and they've used 3D printing technology to hack into knitting machines so that the cost of one scarf is the same, or the cost of one jumper is the same of normally doing a print run of 1,000. And it can be made in 20 minutes. So when you think about how Zara changed the whole logistics model of a garment getting into store from months to weeks, these guys have done it to minutes. And that means that I can go into a store and see a jumper like this that Doug's wearing and decide to zoom in on it. And
You probably wouldn't want that one, though.
You wouldn't see it. It's camo, so you can't see it.
But, or I could decide to change the color or make that spot twice the size, and then within 20 minutes it will be printed for me.
Fantastic.
And that's an amazing experience, but it also gives me that little added feeling of being part of the journey. And I think that's incredible. And then finally, I think it's about creating those real-world experiences, realizing, as I said at the beginning, that people want to go walk down streets like Columbia Road Market, talk to people, have things constantly changing, and how do brands that are so sort of stagnant play a part in that?
Yeah, so it's not just about omni-channel or multi-channel and making all the channels work. I mean, I was
Anyone says those words, I think they shouldn't be in retail.
Yeah.
Right, because it is just retail. If you think about Net-a-Porter, their online experience, if they ever do physical experiences, their delivery, everything is one consistent experience.
Yeah.
And anyone who thinks that there's an online or an offline should have been in retail 20 years ago, but not today.
It was quite funny. I was in a design school in Eindhoven yesterday talking to students who are obviously, I think, second or third year of design, and I expected all of their new product ideas to be technology driven, and actually in this team, none of them were technology driven. And where it had anything to do with technology, it was about stopping it. So, I think, thinking that the answer is just getting better and better at understanding all the different channels that you have to use is maybe not the answer, and I think we're starting to see that in retail. I mean, before I get to Joe, just to sort of finish off in terms of favorites, maybe, Simon, a few thoughts on Black Friday. I guess as a retail panel, we can't not say something about it. How's it gone for Tesco? And, have you got any good stories for us?
So yeah, I obviously have to give the hygienic version in a room like this, which is that it was a phenomenal success. We did very, very well and everything went perfectly. No, it was, on a pure sales front, it went very well. We sold more online than I can remember. And the sort of offer, the website performed very well compared to last year, where it spent the first 10 hours of the day not working at all, which was kind of a shock at the time.
So you didn't go down like John Lewis? We
didn't go down like John Lewis, no, which is a nice thing to be able to say. In terms of funny stories.
How many more sales, though? I know you're trying not to put any numbers into this, but
I don't think I can be pressed on that. But we sold 10 times as much by 10 o'clock in the morning. How's that?
10 times as much.
That's a start, but that was largely down to the website issues last year. So, in terms of my favourite story is always one about the lady who returned a soundbar to a store the next day and was asked by the customer service person, "Why are you returning this?" I don't know what it is. So just the sort of hype around Black Friday that people buy anything that's on offer. It was just kind of crazy.
Anybody buy a soundbar? Anybody return it? No. So just finally, maybe before if there are any questions from the floor.
We're out of time, I think.
We're out of time. We're almost out of time, but Joe hasn't finished. Your favorite thing happening now between big brands and their customers? It'll be very
my
fast.
favourite thing. Well, I'm a mum of 2 toddlers, so for me, anything favourite, I'm afraid, Ross, is not in a physical store these days. It is at home. It is whatever makes my life easy, or that I can do between the hours of, well, this morning it was 1:30 and 3 a.m. when my daughter decided she was going to scream. So one of the things that I was reading in Wired that I thought was quite interesting, actually, that is coming from an entrepreneur, is Smartzo's wish list, which is shoppable interactive video players. And I kind of think, as someone who does like to shop a lot, and whose capacity to shop has been significantly reduced since she has had children, I embrace anything along those lines. So that's one to watch, I think, for me.
Fantastic. All right, well, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for holding out this late. And nation of shopkeepers, here we go. Thank you.
Thanks.